Way too early predictions for the Georgia Bulldogs in 2024. I'm going to go game by game and just talk about what I think might happen in each game, what I think is going to happen. Something I'm struggling with is Georgia going to go undefeated in the regular season again, 4 years in a row? Is that, it's obviously possible, but is that likely to happen? Georgia's got a rough schedule. It's not the end-all be-all to be undefeated. I mean, I can see the Dogs dropping a game, and I've talked to people in person about this, and they don't like hearing that. That, hey, look, Georgia, this is one of the worst schedules in college football. If you look at it from a negative perspective, I guess. It's going to be really tough to get through. 2 byes is going to help out a lot, but the road schedule for Georgia, when you talk about having to go to Texas, having to go to Kentucky, having to go to Ole Miss, having to go to Bama, it's going to be a long year. There's going to be a lot of travel. I'm going to miss a lot of Z's. I'm going to lose some sleep over this season. That's what's the biggest fallout from this schedule, because we're going to be on the road all the time. It's going to be a lot of fun, but I'm going to go game by game, what I think is going to happen. And I'll tell you the game I'm really struggling with. You probably guess. Ryan Kelly from Dawg Post talking about Georgia's schedule, making some predictions. I'm linking the newsletter down below. And if you want written content like this, let us know, and we can do that as well. But we're pumping out some premium stories over on the site right now. I'm doing some position previews. This is going on Wednesday morning, so now on dogpost.com you'll see the wide receiver position preview for the Georgia Bulldogs heading into spring practice. Just some of my thoughts, a breakdown on those. If you want to see content like that, we're putting it out every single day over on dogpost.com, and the best way to keep up with it is our newsletter, which, again, I have linked in the description down below. Clemson, early September, you have the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. August 31st, I was wrong. That's why I just pulled the schedule back up. I think the Dogs are going to destroy Clemson. 2 years ago, I feel like for 9 months, however long it is from the national championship until the first game of the year, in that 2022 offseason, I just raved the whole time about how Georgia was going to obliterate this 16-point spread that they had over the Oregon Ducks in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. Well, now the spread's not quite as big. Clemson, Georgia's opening around 14 and a half points. I think that's the line that I just saw. Of course, it's going to jump up and down as the offseason goes on and as things change and we learn new information. But I think that Georgia's going to destroy Clemson. I think it's going to be another big statement in week 1 for Georgia in a non-conference game in a big time. Like, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs in this game. Is Clemson and Georgia a rivalry? Not really. They're like 90 minutes from each other, though. They share recruiting ground. There is a little bit of history there. A history that Georgia's overall dominated. And Georgia, dominated Clemson defensively in the 2021 season. Will it happen again like that? Obviously, not Georgia's defense is going to be different. Will it be quite as good as 21? I don't think so. Clemson's losing a few key pieces. You lose your RB1. You're losing a receiver in the transfer portal. I think that Clemson's not done a good job at replenishing its team. I saw enough out of Cade Klubnik in that Clemson offense to know that it's not that explosive. It's not that reliable. I thought it was a volatile offense. It's one that kept everything almost within 15 yards. Very little did they go downfield. Is that a trust thing with Cade Klubnik? Is that just a game plan? I don't know. But from what I watched with Clemson over the past year, obviously I didn't watch every Clemson game, and I didn't go back and watch every Clemson game, but every time I watched Clemson, it felt like the offense just struggled to move the ball. And the defense, Matt and Dean will come on here and say a lot about their defense. And yes, there are a lot of really good players on that team, losing your best ones to the draft, but Georgia's offense is going to be good enough. When you talk about Carson Beck, you're gaining Trevor Etienne. I think they've got plenty of weapons on the outside. Like I said, there'll be an article about it over on dogpost.com. You're getting a lot of continuity with the offensive line. I think Georgia's a lot better than Clemson, so I think that they're going to beat the Clemson Tigers by more than 14 points. I'd venture to say this is going to be about a 4-touchdown game as of right now. I don't know if I don't think I'm a big enough person to where people are going to go back and look at my predictions a lot. Very rarely has anyone really done that, but we can pin this and see how wrong or right I was heading into it. I'm not really wrong about these Dogs that often. Tennessee Tech, that's a dub for Georgia. September 2nd at home opener in 2024. So, but in these first few weeks, you got neutral site in Atlanta, home, road, and then home again. So during there's not a lot of home action there at the beginning of the year. Very different from last year when there was a lot of cupcake eating going on there at the beginning of the season. At Kentucky, I think this is a dub. Is there anyone better prepared to defend a Brock Vandagriff-led offense than the Georgia Bulldogs? It would be Vandagriff's third game as Kentucky starter, if that is what ends up happening. I think he's an upgrade from Devin Leary. I do. I think Kentucky has the roster to be a ranked team. When you look at it top to bottom, I think they did a good job in the transfer portal. Obviously, two of those guys were dogs, but that's not all that they added. They added some more to their defense, pulled some guys from Bama. What was going on with Stoops? If he was the A&M coach for about 10 minutes there, the world freaked out, and all of a sudden he was back at Kentucky. I just think Georgia's better. This is not going to be obviously the weather there could be a rainstorm. I don't know what could happen. But this is not going to be some 33-degree, 20-degree weird weather game up in Lexington where Georgia's just trying to get out of the game that we've seen happen up there multiple times. This is September. It's different. Georgia will be better prepared in the middle of September than the Kentucky Wildcats will be getting used to a new quarterback. And look, the getting used to a new quarterback thing happens a lot in college football. It obviously more than the NFL because there's turnover in college football, but now there's way more turnover with the transfer portal. I think Georgia's going to go and beat Alabama on the road. Sorry, Nick Saban's not there anymore, and things are different for me when I'm talking about Georgia and Alabama in this matchup. I think that a handful of the times or 2 or 3 of the times that Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs lost to Alabama, they had a better roster. I didn't think Alabama had a better roster at least 2 of those times. Talk about 2021 SEC Championship, and I think this 2023 SEC Championship, 2017 National Championship, I don't know, that one's up for debate. Georgia should have won that game, you can argue, when we talk about that National Championship, but this is different. And it's Kalen DeBoer's first year, the Kalen DeBoer era. How long will that last? Could end up only being a couple of years. Maybe he is the right guy, but I don't think that they'll be ready for the Georgia Bulldogs on September 28th in Tuscaloosa. I know it's a home game. This is probably going to end up being a night game, if I had to guess. But they lost too much. They lost too many important pieces. The continuity is not going to be there. There's going to be a new coaching staff. I heard Kalen DeBoer in an interview essentially say that they were going to try the air raid with Jalen Milroe. That was enough for me to say that Georgia was going to beat Alabama on September 28th. Auburn, October 5th, home dub. Will this be a tough game? Maybe it will be. I do think that Hugh Freeze is a solid guy to be leading Auburn. I just think that was not a good year for Auburn last year. You can't be losing to teams like New Mexico State. It's not good. I think that they will get better as a program with Hugh Freeze. I do. But not enough to go to Athens and beat the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm going to say the same thing about Mississippi State. Mississippi State was one of the worst teams in the conference last year. Probably going to be the same case this year. Not much of an improvement for them. They get a new coach. Look, man, I'm not going to analyze these games that there's not as much to analyze. It'll be different during the season, and there'll be a lot to analyze, and obviously it'll bring you different content. But this is a way too early for a reason. Mississippi State's a dub. So at this point, Georgia would be 6-0 heading into Austin, Texas on October 19th. And this is the only game where I'm not sure about. I think it'll end up being at night. I'd be surprised if it was any earlier than 3:30. And this is a huge game. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on in Austin that weekend. I think that Texas has got a stretch at this point in the year. I'm going to double check that to see the order that comes in. But Texas will be coming off. Yeah, they'll be coming off of I wanted to confirm that was real. Texas will be coming off of its first true SEC matchup against Mississippi State. They'll get a bye, and then they've got the Red River rivalry, nailed it on the first try against Oklahoma the week before Georgia, and I think that they could be beat up from that. So I've got Georgia, and you're going to see where this is going. I've got Georgia, at this point in time, I think Georgia's a better team. I think that Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck are two of probably the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in college football. And I think that Texas and Georgia both did a good job of replenishing what they lost on offense through the transfer portal. I think Texas lost a couple key defensive pieces. I don't know enough about that situation to know if they replaced them in a solid way. For Georgia, it's kind of the same case. And I do know a lot about the situation. I want to learn more about it in the spring. But I've got Georgia beating Texas. I think this is going to be a good game. I think Texas is going to be one of the best teams in college football next year, along with the Dogs. And when I talk about the best, I talk about the best 5 or 6 teams. I do think Texas is in there. And I do think that this is a playoff team we're talking about. At this point, Georgia, we're possibly talking about Clemson, Alabama, Texas, 3 playoff teams that I think Georgia's going to be at this point. I'm not going to spend too much time on the rest of these, to be honest with you. I'm going to rapid fire a little bit of it. Florida is not in the same universe as Georgia, and they haven't been for a few years. And Georgia's going to get a bye before they get to go down to Jacksonville. Obviously, it's always been that way, or it's been that way at least in the past, in the recent past. Graham Mertz returning. You lose one of your best offensive weapons, heads to Georgia. It's not a good. That's a sign of the times, and apparently the times aren't good. And Florida, look, I think Florida could be 3-9. They're going to be in the middle of one of the toughest stretches maybe of all time in college football. Is that an exaggeration when you look at Florida's schedule at this point? So I do think Georgia probably beats the crap out of the Gators that day. At Ole Miss, a little bit of a trappy game. Maybe this is the one they drop. If they drop one, you lose your best running back. You get who probably was the best player in the transfer portal in Walter Nolan. Maybe it was Caleb Downs. Maybe it was Julian Sayin. Walter Nolan is a guy that I thought Georgia should have went after really hard. Would have changed their defensive line. So a huge upgrade for Ole Miss. Ole Miss defense that was extremely overrated last year. Just being honest, really good offenses put up a lot of points against them. LSU, Georgia, just throwing a couple examples out there at you. Georgia put up 52. I think LSU put up 40-something, even though they lost to the Rebels. You lose Judkins. So I don't know. I've never been a big fan of Jackson Dart. Me personally, I just don't. I think that this is a playoff contender. I don't know that they're strong enough to beat Georgia. I don't know that their crowd will be strong enough to beat Georgia. Tennessee at home. So I've got Georgia's 9-0 at this point with Tennessee, UMass, and Tech left over. So let's just go ahead and talk about UMass and Tech. I think they're both dubs for Georgia. Let's end this on Tennessee. Back-end challenge for the Dogs, but it's a home game. So this is the biggest home game for Georgia most likely on November 16th, ending the season with 3 home games. That'd be nice and comfortable heading into the college football playoff because I think we all know Georgia's most likely going to make it. Tennessee got to take a step forward, or was that a flash in the pan in 2022? I think that's what we're going to find out this season. I think this Nico guy's a really good quarterback. Are these recruiting violations going to cause any problems for the Vols? Probably not during the season, I don't think. But I think that the Volunteers are a good team. This is probably a ranked team. But Georgia beat the snot out of them last season, and I don't think they're going to be that much better. I see this being a solid win for Georgia, and my way too early prediction is another undefeated season for the Georgia Bulldogs. Too bold? Too bold? Links are down below. Thank you for watching.